Hello and welcome to the Zygaverse. Today I'm chatting with June Parker, who is a very insightful and intellectual individual. So June has multiple degrees in HR and has over 20 years combined experience in recruitment, employment and career coaching. She's an accredited member with the International Federation for Coaching. She's a member of the Career Development Association of Australia, and she's currently a board member for the Equal Employment Opportunity Network. I hope you get some value out of this. So I thought today's theme could revolve around sort of diversity, equality, returning to work, and any sort of female in the workplace subjects you wanted to chat about. So thank you for chatting with me.
Pleasure.
All right, sweet. Well, I guess the first question I'm going to ask you is, why is diversity in the workplace important, and what are some attributes or characteristics of people that would render them as diverse?
Well, that's a big question to start with. So why is diversity important in the workplace? I think before I tell you why diversity is important, I think it's probably better to think about diversity in terms of diversity and inclusion. So diversity is about employing a broad range of people that come from different backgrounds and have different experiences. So they might be people with different ages, different nationalities, different genders, people with disabilities, the LGBTIQ community. So a whole range of people. The important part is also then making those people feel included. So that's why people talk about diversity and inclusion. So the inclusion part is more about making those people feel safe and making those people feel comfortable to bring the whole selves to work, so the organisation gets the best out of people. And in fact, even a lot of D&I practitioners are now turning it around and saying I and D. So the inclusion part's the most important part, because if you get that right, people will want to come to your business, right, and your organisation. It makes it easier to find people through the recruitment process.
Is there benefits to diversity in the workplace?
Yeah, so there's lots of research, lots and lots of research that talks about if you have a diverse workforce, you are more likely to be profitable, you're more likely to have new ideas, be more innovative, those types of things. So even things like if you have a culturally diverse workforce, the stats are a 35% increase in profit over those that don't. Kind of makes sense, right? Because if you've got people who are different, they're coming up with different ideas and they have different perspectives and they're thinking different things, and that's what you want, especially kind of today, in the sort of workforce and the rate of change and technology. So having those different people makes sense. Yeah, cool. It's the right thing to do as well, it is, morally and ethically. Come on, we're all the same. You'll bleed red.
It's true. So if you're a person that may not sort of fit the mold of being normal or like an ideal demographic, how should you go about advertising yourself?
So normal is a term that you kind of don't really want to use normal, because if we're all normal, we're just different, and difference is normal. But if what you're asking is about, if you were somebody from a minority group, perhaps. And it's true in recruitment, it's harder for people, say, who come from overseas that don't come from a sort of normal or a regular English speaking kind of background. So if you're from India perhaps, or you're from Asia perhaps, it makes it harder to find a job. So what do those people do? I think it's really interesting. So LinkedIn's a really good forum for those people. So to start to kind of brand themselves as having some really good traits and really good experience and get themselves known is key. I often find that when people who aren't sort of English speaking, when they apply, there's cultural differences as well. So English may not be brilliant, and there's sometimes the way that you phrase things are culturally different, right? So it's good to get somebody to proof your applications and proof your resumes. I'm doing that with a guy at the moment who is just outstanding, he's brilliant, but his English is his second language. And so in order for him to get face-to-face an interview, he needs to get through that hurdle of the applicant tracking systems and the recruiters shortlisting. So helping him with English is making a difference. And then I think also there's a lot of unconscious bias in recruitment, and even, you know, second generation or third generation, say, people who speak Oka, you know, English, can be discriminated against because of their name, like maybe even your name, you know, Jaden. Like people might look at that and go, oh, it's too hard to pronounce, I'll just flick to somebody else.
Yeah, okay.
You know, like people make assumptions based on a whole bunch of stuff. So if that were the case, as somebody speaks very good English, then LinkedIn's great, because then you could get online, you can talk, so people can see that actually, even though you might have a capitalise name, your English is perfect, you know, so it can reduce some of that bias. So I think using whatever, you know, everything that's available to them is the way that you should do that, basically.
Yeah, cool. So do you think true equality can be achieved in the workplace, and are there any challenges to that?
There's lots of challenges. Unconscious bias is a big one. Can it be achieved? I think, I hope so, but I think it's a long road. The reality is that in an organization, it has to come from the top. So if you've got a CEO and a leadership team who actually really care about diversity and inclusion in the workforce, who genuinely feel that it's the right thing to do from a workforce perspective, and that they proactively put measures in place to make sure that people feel psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, physically safe, and they encourage that, and they live and breathe that, and they actually penalize people who don't own that culture. That's kind of the only way, you know, because a lot of people talk about diversity, but then they allow people to be bullied. They don't have any LGBTIQ initiatives. They allow kind of jokes around race. They don't have women on the board. They don't have women in leadership positions, or they might have a token. Like, that's not going to work, right? So it really has to be a whole of business cultural change for that to happen.
Yeah, okay, cool, interesting. Do you think we're at a point where people can sort of, if they are sort of a bit different or from a minority group, they could sort of lead with that difference and capitalize on it when they're trying to apply for jobs? Or is society still not ready?
Yeah, it depends. If you look at gender at the minute, like for example, if you're applying for a construction manager position in a typically male-dominated industry like construction, and you're female, then at the moment that's kind of an advantage because you're female, so you can lead with your difference. If you were disabled, then that's going to be not helpful for that. If you're, and I guess it also depends on the organization. So some organizations are really open to diversity, and therefore, like if they talk about the fact that they embrace neurodiversity, so different ways of thinking, or they are looking for different gender balance, then sometimes it helps, but you don't know. And even though they might say that on their advertising and they might have that on their website, it comes down to the person who's recruiting. So that person who's recruiting doesn't believe that, and they see an application, then they may or may not screen that person in or out.
Yeah, so even like individual biases as well.
We're all just people, so it's all individual bias, right? You know, I've seen people who are such champions of change and who are, you know, male and female, but have really championed the cause, and their organizations are fabulous. And others who just say it, but yet they still go drinking with the boys and don't invite the girls, you know?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So that probably leads into my next question. Is there any sort of female specific challenges or things that they should be aware of when they're going for jobs or applying for jobs? Because I chatted with you a while ago and you had some really interesting information about sort of unconscious biases and stats with women.
Well, being a woman, I have, you know, it is interesting. So I think I was talking to you about the beauty bias. Is that what I was talking to you about? Yeah. So there is such a thing as beauty bias, which is that if you're too pretty as a female, sometimes that works against you, because the people who are shortlisting tend to be women. And sometimes there's something going on there that's making them think, oh, let's not hire that person. Okay. Also, if you get for the interview, sometimes if you're too pretty, this is terrible to say, I hate saying this, it's like ridiculous, but if you are, sometimes the guys think, are you going to cause problems in my team?
Getcha. And you were saying that they didn't take them as seriously if they were really good looking sometimes. They didn't think that they had the skills there.
And it's a perception, right? So if you're pretty and blonde, then the unconscious bias and the stereotype is that you're not really super smart. Now that's not true, because there are neurosurgeons who are pretty and blonde, and there are fantastic, we are all smart regardless of what you look like, but people sometimes can't get through what people look like, which is what bias is all about, whether it's color or religion or gender. It's that. So people are making assumptions which aren't true. And then they're basing their recruitment decisions or their development decisions or their training decisions on facts that just aren't true. Yeah, cool. I'm just going to hit you with 2 more questions.
Okay. So actually 3 more questions.
Okay.
Are there any innovations or advancements in managing diversity and inclusion in the workplace? Technology, practices, people?
Yeah, so there's some things that big companies are doing. So some companies are looking at blind CVs. Okay. So when it comes to, again, name or gender, nationality, those types of things, they're taking off that from their CVs so that they are making a shortlist, based just on the information that they're reading, not associating it with the person. And there's been some massive research that shows that there was one massive study done by the government, in fact, that talked about when you have blind CVs, so when you have male CVs or CVs this is about gender, but when the males were identified as male, 35% of more of those got to interview stage. When their CVs were blind, so they couldn't identify which gender, only 8% of those men were more getting to the interview stage. Once they got to the interview stage, when the CVs were not de-identified, so the 35% men got more, then more men got the job, right? Of course, makes sense. When they were de-identified and then more women got, or slightly, it was more of a balance, got through, more women then got the jobs.
Yeah, interesting.
So blind CVs are one way to try and level it out. A lot of unconscious bias training. Some organisations are looking to have diversity on the recruitment panel. So if you're interviewing and it's 2 white males and you're interviewing a Asian woman or a African American woman, then it doesn't, you don't have that kind of familiarity with that person. That thing called familiarity bias. So it means that people tend to hire people they like and are like them. So you need to have some diversity on the panel so that if you had a African-American woman on the panel, then you'd have a much better conversation and more likely to employ that person. Yeah. And then there's other things like, you'll know this as well, like when companies advertise, they use gendered language. So some of the language is very male dominated and some's kind of female dominated. So you find that women tend to apply for more of the ones that are, female orientated, and men, adventurous and tough and all those kind of things, they apply for those. So there's software that can scan your ads and then it gives you a report to suggest or to say whether it's biased in its language, and then you can change it up if you want to.
Okay.
So there's kind of a bunch, and then obviously just the training. There's a bunch of stuff going on.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because it really should be related to the role-related capabilities, but all the human layer of it just obscures everything because they take into account all those things that don't really matter. So 2 more things. What is your view on the traditional resume? Do you think it works well? Could it be improved?
No, I don't think it works well for all the reasons I said. And I think that it's contingent upon a couple of things. One is your grasp of English language. And then the second is your understanding of how applicant tracking systems work. So if you know what that key is, and that's what I do when I coach people, I explain how they work and then how you need to position your resumes to get through that system. If you get that, then you're in a much better position. It doesn't mean that you're a better person or that you're more suited to the role. It just means you understand the key and secrets, and then you get through the process. So I don't think, I don't know how to do that. I know that yours is more whole of person, which I think
interactive.
Makes sense. More interactive, makes sense. Because the traditional resume, and even the way the resume looks, like some people make their resume look really smick. So from looking at that perspective, already you're feeling a bit warmer and a bit more comfortable with that person because it looks good.
Yeah,
you know, like that's just your kind of graphic design skills.
There's a mismatch because humans love aesthetics and the machines love boring text with no design.
Yes.
So
yes.
All right, last question for you, and then I'll let you go back to your busy day. What are your 2 biggest career tips for people?
2 biggest career tips. All right. I think LinkedIn is a good one. I think brand yourself on LinkedIn so that people can see what you like, and get a coach. Like, get a coach if you want someone to really help you, or a friend. And be really clear about, the 3rd one maybe, and be really clear about what you can offer. Like, to be really confident in your skills, and then tell people, you know, that's what you can do. Because, and again, sometimes that's cultural. Some, you know, if you look at Asian cultures, they don't talk themselves up as much as maybe some other cultures do. And sometimes women aren't as confident in selling themselves. Sometimes introverts aren't as. So it kind of, I think, to level the playing field, you need to learn how to do that. So that when you do it in your resume, and you do it in your interviews, and you do it in your job, and then you get career progression. So yes, that would be my tips.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much, June, for this chat with me.
You're welcome.
It's good to catch up again. Have a lovely day.
You too. Take care. Thanks, Judith.